Hey everyone, welcome to the Otherz Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Penny. Joining me this week, another special guest. Breaking our usual tradition of having a guest from the United States. I think all of our guests have been so far. This time, from my home country, from my hometown, a good friend of mine, and a friend of yours as well, from Shotgun The Aux, Tom Comey. How you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you, Steve. How are you, man?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Thank you for having me on. We've been meaning to do this for a time, so it's a pleasure to be here, sir. Good to see your face again.
Indeed. It's been a while. Now, some people may recognise Tom's name. I was going to say face, but only I can see him at the moment, obviously, which is slightly off-putting to me. But some people may recognise the name. I appeared on Tom's podcast. When was this? Back in the summer, maybe? Before the summer?
Yeah, it was
something like that.
A good five months ago, I'd say.
Yeah. So Tom's podcast, Shotgun The Aux, which mainly focuses on UK hip hop, the UK hip hop scene, and everything in and around it. Doing really great things over there. So I think, as I've said in the past, if you are a hip hop fan in general, or you want to get into UK hip hop scene, understand it a little bit more, find out about some more artists over there, then definitely go and check out Shotgun The Aux.
Big up, man. Thank you. Appreciate the plug.
That's the plug over with. That's all you get now. That's all you get.
You got in there before I did. So no, respect, man. Thank you.
That's fine. You can plug some more at the end as well, and you can tell everyone where people can find you.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. We can go into that later. But what we got on the cards today?
This week we are talking about the monster hits, the controversial hits. Some people love it, some people hate it, and that is
ultimately. You know you want it.
I know you want it. Sorry. You know you want it. That is, as you can probably tell from that very poor reference, Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines, featuring T.I. and Pharrell.
Can I just make a quick disclaimer? Before this podcast, obviously I know the song inside out. Everyone knows the song. It's the first time I'd ever seen the X-rated video. Was today.
Oh, what a treat you had.
Yeah, man. When you told me there were two videos, it blew my mind. I was just like, have I been under a rock? But anyway.
You certainly have.
Thanks for the recommendation.
Because this song is now 6 years old.
I believe so, yeah, 2013.
Which kind of blew my mind. It was released 20th of March 2013. We'll go through some of the stats. It reached number 1 in 25 countries. The video itself on YouTube, the PG version, let's say, currently has 633 million YouTube views, while the unrated version has 64 million views.
That surprises me, though.
In a positive way or not?
Not in a positive or a negative way. Just it surprises me that the PG version is. But then again, I suppose there's a smaller population of perverts out there. You'd like to think.
Yeah, I guess. But you have to remember as well, I think the unrated version was originally put up by Robin Thicke's team on his own account. It was then taken down. It was then re-put up by Vivo. And I believe, nobody quote me on this, but I believe Vivo have a special agreement in place with Google because of the content. Obviously, if one of us put a kind of X-rated video up of some kind, it would get taken down straight away. But I think because of the size of Vivo, their agreements they have in place with Google and with YouTube, it's been allowed to stay up and listed as unrated. And obviously, because it's listed as unrated, if you have a kid who's got like a YouTube account and it's logged as a kid's account, they're not going to see this video and stuff.
That makes sense. Yeah. I guess I was a bit shocked when I switched it on, like a Vivo video, and the first thing you see is kind of like, topless women kind of flaunting it everywhere. I was like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, if you were to click on the wrong one, if you didn't know what you were looking for, and you clicked on that unrated one, you would be in for a slight surprise, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think by the end of 2013, this song had sold just under 15 million copies, and that is sold 15 million copies, not been streamed or downloaded or anything like that. These are actual sales, physical and digital sales, people paying money. And it became the best-selling song around the world for that year. By April 2014, it was the UK's most downloaded song of all time, with just over 1.5 million digital sales as well in there. That has since actually been surpassed by Happy by Pharrell. As of August 2016, it was the seventh best-selling digital single of all time. I believe it is now 11th. It's dropped down a couple of places thanks to the likes of, what's he called, old ginger fella?
Ed Sheeran.
That's the one, Ed Sheeran, who's got, who I think has the majority of the top 10 of that list.
That ginger fella, love it.
I can think of his name. I knew you'd know from that description. Then in 2014, also, it was nominated for 2 Grammys. It was nominated for Record of the Year and Best Pop Duo/Group Performance, neither of which it actually won, if I remember correctly.
Do you think that had anything to do, and we'll obviously get onto it, anything to do with the controversy that surrounds the track?
I'd like to think, I'd like to think no, but at the same time, I think because of all the stuff that was going on around it, it's quite hard to ignore. But then with the Grammys themselves, they're a law unto themselves. They seem to vote for what it's like the Oscars. It's very political. There's a lot of favours being curried there. And again, you look at a lot of people that win the Grammys nowadays, and maybe for the last 15, 20 years or whatever, it's no longer about the best song in that category. It's normally about the most commercial, a lot of the times which one has sold the most, which one will get more people watching the Grammys. And again, like I say, there's a lot of these kind of industry favours happening as well. So you can never really quite tell why a certain song has or hasn't won at the Grammys. And similarly for the Oscars and things like that as well at certain times. Yeah,
I can imagine, mate. Favours. Robin Thicke. Favours. Anyway, we'll get into that.
We'll get to some of that.
We'll get into the thick of it later. Sorry.
This is gonna be pun.
You can edit that out.
Oh no, that'll stay in. Don't worry. So if we have a quick chat about the video and the song itself, although we won't dwell on it too long, we'll get to the more interesting stuff.
Yeah.
As you say, both the versions of the videos stylistically are very similar. They're directed by Diane Martel, who I think we've mentioned a few times on the podcast before as a long-time collaborator with Pharrell. Both the videos very minimalist.
You're stealing all my adjectives, Steve. I was gonna be talking through my thoughts on the video, and minimalist was something that's jumping out on my phone. But
all right, I'll go to you. You carry on.
So. As I kind of mentioned earlier, this was the first time I've actually seen an X-rated video, and I think the only kind of, I guess, distinct difference between the two to delineate is like tits. That's all I can say. And to your point, it's kind of very minimalist. You can tell that it's shot by like someone who has a lot of influence in the fashion industry. Obviously, it's kind of scantily clad women. There's big kind of bold hashtags in red, which kind of it works well in contrast to the white background. I think one of the models is holding a lamb or a baby goat or something weird. I think it's a lamb.
It is a lamb, yes.
It's a lamb. Yeah. I was just kind of okay. That's a bit odd. And at one point, I thought I saw some like really kind of weird looking taxidermy, but it might have just been an ugly dog.
It was a taxidermy, yes. It was a weird looking dog that had been stuffed, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that clears that one up. Yeah. It's just a very obviously it's a very kind of focused video. You can understand kind of a lot of, and we'll go into the kind of controversy and everything later. But you've got obviously Robin Thicke, you've got T.I. and you've got Pharrell. All kind of looking, dapper Dan's all kind of like looking really smooth, surrounded by these really, really attractive women, and it's kind of like it's very obviously shot through the male gaze, which is ironic considering it's a female director, and I think that's a really kind of important point to note throughout this entire, throughout the controversy. But yeah, I think the video is obviously shot very, very well. It's very well produced. It looks slick. It's minimalist again. Yeah, it's just a good video. I haven't really got. I mean, I can't really complain. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Steve, but I like the video.
Yeah, very similar thoughts here. It's there's
Another
nothing that
pervert.
massively. Yeah, you like one of the videos more than the other, but yeah, there's nothing that it stands out massively in the videos. There's no.
Patron. Like, I could think of a few things. There was one like quite funny part at the end where you see these like big balloons blown up with like Robin Thicke has a big dick, and I thought, do you think that was a stipulation? Do you think he came up with that idea? Yeah, maybe. He's like, the world has to know. The world has to know. Like, maybe he's overcompensating for something with those balloons, but I was just thinking throughout the whole thing. Yeah, obviously these three dudes, obviously probably really, really good with the women, alpha male types, and I was thinking, Steve, how funny it would be, like, if it was like me and you in that music video, like how odd that would look and how awkward it would be for everyone involved. But that's
it would be I think a horrific experience for everyone involved, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it would be horrible.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially
I can't say when I've had these conversations before, I can't say anyone has ever said, let's put ourselves into that video. Let's think about what would happen then. That's a very different take on it, but yeah.
Yeah, but you've got to think about these things. Otherwise, it's just like you can give a commentary on a video. You can talk about the aesthetics. You can talk about the kind of the lighting. You can talk about the kind of themes. But yeah, man, I like to get deep with this shit. So it's can I swear? I don't know what the rules are.
You can swear all you like.
Fuck yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's my thoughts on the video, man. I think it's it's slick. I think that's probably the best word to describe it.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, well, like I say, there are similar thoughts here. It's well produced, it's well made, it is slick. It's I like some of that quirkiness that's in there. I read a few interviews with Diane Martel, kind of at the time, and also recently when digging out some notes for this podcast, and she talks about the influence of kind of high-end fashion, which you can see in how the models are dressed, but then also having the jarringness of those big hashtags on the screen, and then that weirdness and that quirkiness of having Pharrell shouting into the face of a lamb that a woman is holding, and having a taxidermy dog there, and having a giant syringe and all sorts of weird stuff like that.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of themes throughout, a lot of kind of suggestive props.
Yeah, and what was quite funny, I read in a couple of interviews afterwards as well, there was a Robin Thicke interview where they were talking about the video, and I think he was being, or he at least later said he was kind of being a bit sarcastic and was probably a bit fucked up at the time as well, but he was talking about, we were throwing the craziest ideas around, the syringe thing. He was like, we were getting the girls to pretend to shoot up, and we had the stuffed dog, and we were doing stuff with like bestiality and things like that. I think he was like, he was a bit fucked. He was a bit fucked up at the time, and that didn't actually really happen. Yeah, because then that was put to Diane Martel afterwards, and I think she called his words crazy or something like that. She just kind of very much dismissed everything that he'd said.
That seems to be a bit of a theme with what he says in interviews. We'll get onto that, but
yes, exactly.
But yeah, man,
there's a lot of that to come.
There was a farmyard vibe to that video as well. You had the kind of the hay bales and going on to the kind of the chauvinistic viewpoints later on when we talk about the controversy. There's obviously kind of a link between you can't not notice the link between kind of the women being almost kind of viewed as animals in the video, and hence the controversy it obviously led to. But yeah, man, it's an interesting one for sure.
It's a different one, let's say. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'm all for kind of making art, and they're all kind of consenting adults making art, and that doesn't bother me. No one was hurt except maybe a lamb that was deafened. But do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, they all knew what they were doing.
Yeah, we can move on to that point as well now. So, my next kind of point around this was, the kind of main controversies around this. And I guess the first one is that possible chauvinistic view upon it, the possible exploitation of the women, the trivialization of that kind of sexual content that you get, at least in one version of the videos. And I remember a lot of this happening, the conversations happening sort of at the time and not long after it came out. And I remember seeing a lot of the interviews with people involved in it as well. And, Emily Ratajkowski, who obviously became massively famous pretty much off the back of that video. I remember her saying that, all of the models there that were involved, knew what they were doing. They consented to everything. They were really well treated. All of the ideas were kind of run through them first, and they got to say yes or no to everything.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier as well, you have a female director here, and from her perspective, from what I've read after, she was talking about, she was empowering.
Yeah, that's what
women.
I was going to say. The counter argument to saying that it's chauvinistic is actually that if you think about it, it is empowering. It can be interpreted that way. So female making it, it's almost like women taking charge of their own kind of sexuality and being kind of like, yeah, you know what, we like sex too. And it's, there are obviously two lenses you can look at it from. But man, I think that's a really, really interesting point.
But in terms of, the video and stuff as well, that controversy grew so large that I think most universities in the UK banned the song from being played on their premises, banned it from being played like in kind of bars and stuff like that are on university campuses. So it really did kind of strike a chord, rightly or wrongly with people.
There were a lot of protests as well, weren't there, in the States and all kinds of stuff. Before we do get onto that, because obviously we'll probably talk quite a bit about the controversy with the video itself, the two versions. Were they both shot like kind of sequentially? Was one shot and then like straight afterwards on like the same day or however long they had? That's madness. So which one did they film first? Do you know?
I'm not too sure. I'd imagine you'd probably start with the clean one, but I'm not a video director, so.
and then just Robin Thicke just like wanders in high, and he's just like, yeah, let's just try it again, but with your boobs out. I'm like, yeah, I can imagine that happening. And they were just like, well, sure, why not? I guess. Yeah, interesting.
What else did I have around this? Well, before we kind of move on to all the real controversies, here's a thought I have on Emily Ratajkowski, and this is maybe not an unpopular thought or anything, but so Emily Ratajkowski, obviously, as everyone knows, famous model now. She's involved in lots of different stuff. She's known the world round, millions of followers, mainly made famous from this video. Yeah, this was her kind of big break.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for somebody that has been made famous from a music video, I have never witnessed another human being with less rhythm than she has.
Man, I wasn't too sure where you were going with this, but now you've said that, I can't help but to think about how right you are.
If you watch it in the video, she's kind of quite off. But then, if you subsequently if you follow her on Instagram or anything like that, if you watch her dance to any piece of music, she has no rhythm whatsoever.
Calling her out, man.
There you go.
Starting some beef with the models. No, that's.
These are the important topics we need to talk about.
Exactly. If you're out there, I mean, obviously, with your newfound fame, you might want to invest in some dancing lessons. Just a suggestion. But hey, who am I to suggest that? But
it's been 6 years and she's got God knows how many millions of Instagram followers, so she probably doesn't care, does she?
One of them has to be a dance instructor, surely. She's got the pick of the bunch. This is a weird tangent.
Sorry, yes, it was, but it's just something I've always had in my mind and I had to get out there. I had to tell the world.
Let's get this viral and let's get her some lessons.
Let's get blocked on every social platform possible by the most famous model in the world. Okay. All right, let's move on a little bit. Here's a question for you. Is this song rapey?
So that's actually a quote, isn't it? Like, a bit rapey, inverted speech marks, inverted commas. I'm just going to say it. Yes. I know you want it. I think it is quite rapey. Maybe even if it wasn't intended to be. But then again, I'm not sure whether or not that would be my initial interpretation. If it was kind of, Plato's cave and I was like in there and I heard it, would I necessarily think that? Or is it because of all the controversy that followed, which is kind of, I guess, conditioning me and shaping that opinion? And it's hard to kind of not be kind of conditioned in that way and influenced in that way based on all the conversations and controversy surrounding the track. But you can't listen to this song now or even have a conversation without, whispering in a really kind of sleazy way, like, you want it. I know you want it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So yeah,
I know because I've received some messages that are very similar to that in the last few days. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and yeah, most of them probably from me.
Yeah.
And there's just something very menacing about the lyrics. However, that's the power of music, I guess. I mean, for something to spark up this much conversation from fucking song lyrics, do you know what I mean? But then, obviously, Pharrell, didn't he try to kind of, I mean, we'll go into this a bit later, but initially he was obviously defending the track, and he's been on several interviews, including one with Christian Guru Murphy. So he's a journalist here in the UK, and he was defending the track, saying that, I think it's empowering, I love women, etc. But then didn't he go on record on GQ, like after that, kind of taking it back and try to distance himself a little bit from it? And he almost seemed to be making out that he was naive to the fact that it would be taken that way, which I didn't really know how to take, because for a guy that's been, so immersed in hip hop for so long, he's been around kind of chauvinistic lyrics and all of that kind of thing. So I'm not too sure whether or not I buy that. But then again, I heard it completely out of context. So yeah, I don't know, man.
See, I agree to a certain extent there. I think the song itself, without any context, which is how most people listen to most music,
yeah.
they don't dig into the shit like we dig into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does. It does, whatever your view may be, sound, in inverted commas, rapey.
Yeah.
It does sound sleazy. The problem you also have there is the man singing most of it is a fairly notorious womanizer. I'm
not laughing at, like, I'm just picturing like Robin Thicke's face, like smiling in a really kind of seductive way, like, and it just makes me laugh.
He comes across as sleazy to a certain extent, or has done in the past.
No. He does.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Sleazy, man.
All right, we'll give him that. And I don't think that helps at all. That adds another kind of layer or interpretation onto the song itself when it's that kind of person projecting those lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you go back and you look at a lot of the early videos where Pharrell was kind of defending it, I think he was right to defend it. Mm-hmm. To a certain extent, because it was him that wrote it. No matter, even though Robin Thicke's name is on there and he originally claimed to have co-wrote it, let's say, I think now we all know via various lawsuits and interviews that Robin Thicke was probably incapable of writing his own name, let alone writing a song.
Yeah, he was like
at that time.
He's like the Towley of the pop world. He's always always fucking high.
Yes.
Didn't he say in the deposition that he I think the year it came out, or the year following, he didn't go to a single interview that he wasn't either like drunk out of his mind or high on prescription medication or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's from my understanding, that's how he was in the studio every day as well. He would just turn up, just kind of off his head. Didn't really have much input into the songs themselves. And in terms of this one, Pharrell kind of wrote it from start to finish, basically. And I think if you understand the background, you understand the actual context of it and stuff like that, and you kind of try and strip away, the stuff that's happened since. I think there's, the meaning behind it is very different to how it's interpreted now. Yeah. I think it was genuinely written as a kind of
just a kind of a sexy pop song. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a slightly sort of empowering song to women. But as Pharrell says in some of these interviews, and I'll put some links in the show notes. There are you don't have to be a bad person or a dirty person to kind of want to have sex or to think about these things.
Yeah.
Even kind of good people, I'm saying in air quotes again, think about these things, want to do these things.
It's a very conservative kind of shameful mindset, isn't it, that he's kind of breaking free from. But do you think though that obviously given we're in this day and age, like social media and someone's opinion can kind of basically start this massive kind of domino effect of people's outrage, etc. But this isn't, if you actually listen to it, it can obviously be interpreted as controversial, but no more so than I can think of hundreds and hundreds of other songs which I can't list throughout the years that have been released by various artists. Mm-hmm. But because of the age we're living in now, where information and opinions are shared so easily, I think it just kind of fell victim to that, obviously. But just building on that point, I think, but also because this was a commercial, to your point earlier, you said this was a fucking smash hit, do you know what I mean? And that's probably another reason why it got that kind of attention, because it was heard by so many different people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we could go back and we could pick a million different songs from different genres that. If you just sat there and you read the lyrics and you associated it with a slightly sleazy person, mm-hmm. and in a certain period in time where these things are kind of bubbling up to the surface a bit more, being paid attention to a bit more, you could point fingers and pick holes out of a million different songs out there. Yeah. That's not to say, this song is right or wrong in the way it's kind of done it. But like you say, I think it was an amalgamation of lots of different things all coming together at that time, which happened to be, whichever way you look at it, the right or the wrong time.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, just the kind of counter argument to that is that if you think of another, I was watching an interview, I can't remember who it was with. It was a YouTube video talking about the whole blurred lines thing. And it's very kind of, when you listen to it, it's very kind of, you can interpret it in a very specific way, to your point, a bit rapey. Right, versus say an artist who releases a lot of kind of sexually charged music. So let's use Prince, for example. I think is what the person used in the video, but they were never really prescriptive, and it wasn't very. It wasn't rapey. It was just sexual. There's kind of a distinct difference. I think the controversy with Blurred Lines is that you could look into it as a song about raping someone.
You could if you wanted to view it that way, but I think you've got to. Yeah, it gets to a point where, again, you could pick many Prince songs, and you could twist some of the words and the lyrics in your head and make those about that, about rape or about anything else as well. And if you took those Prince songs and you had somebody like Robin Thicke singing them, and you had other things going on around it, again, that would change the context and interpretation of them again. Mm-hmm. And I just want to read a quick quote out that I pulled from an interview quickly. That just gives some of this perspective from Pharrell's side that he was talking about. And this is an interview he did just after it came out with Pitchfork. And it says, what would be controversial about it? In Blurred Lines, the Robin Thicke lyrics are, you don't need no papers, meaning you're not a possession. That man is not your maker, meaning he is not God, nor can he produce children or women for that matter. He's a man, so he definitely did not make you. What I was trying to say was that man is trying to domesticate you, but you don't need no papers. Let me liberate you. But it was misconstrued. Mm-hmm. When you pull back and look at the entire song, the point is she's a good girl, and even good girls want to do things, and that's where you have the blurred lines. She expresses it in dancing because she's a good girl. People who are agitated just want to be mad, and I accept their opinion. We got a kick out of making people dance, and that was the only intention.
Yeah, man. I think I somewhat agree with that. I mean, it's music at the end of the day, and I think the intention was kind of sincere when they first made it. I think to some extent, do you think that by them, and obviously having a conversation about these things is inevitable, but do you think that if it was you who made the track, yeah, and then you heard all of these kind of adverse opinions coming back and kind of targeting it and victimizing the track, would you publicly defend it, or would you just let it slide? Because do you think it's almost like the
It draws
apology?
attention
Yeah,
to it.
exactly.
Yeah. I think, again, a lot of this depends on, and this goes to the next point we get to in a minute, the Marvin Gaye lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on the popularity and the success of the track. Had that track not been as successful, had that just been a straight up number 7 track on his album, which never came out as a single, never did anything,
Mm-hmm.
nobody would have given two shits about it, about the lyrical content, about the production, about the whole kind of Marvin Gaye stuff or anything like that. Nobody would have cared. But because it kind of blew up, it got that attention. And when it does blow up, and you do have a large number of people that are also for the track as well as against the track, I think you kind of have to, you don't have to stand up for it, but if it's your work that you've made and you're proud of it and there are genuine intentions behind it, then you're going to want to stand up for it and you're going to want to try and convince people that, like, no, hold on, no, it's not meant to be about that, it's meant to be about this. Maybe it doesn't come across that way, but here's my explanation to try and win you over almost, and to make you see my side of things.
It's just kind of hard not to dig yourself a hole. But going on from that, and obviously we talked, you kind of just alluded to it. What do you actually think of the song itself? Because in terms of what Pharrell has kind of produced and made over the years, it's not exactly, in my opinion, I think he's made much better music. And I'm kind of shocked by, I'm not really shocked by it, because obviously the accompanying video and there was an appeal behind it and it's kind of toe tapping and stuff. But in my opinion, it's kind of, the song's just a bit meh. It certainly isn't one of his best. The kind of like the bass and like the chord progression's very like familiar, shall we say. I think that it's kind of strange how out of all of like Pharrell's like impressive discography, this is the one that's kind of blown up the most in this way. Besides Happy, obviously. But what's your thoughts on the song, man?
It's by no means his best work, I don't think, but then not every song has to be. I think in terms of, if you're ranking it against other pop songs, I think it's a very good pop song. Mm-hmm. It's the sort of song at that time that seemed to resonate with people, because now this is where we get into timelines and dates, which I can never remember. Because around that time as well, you've also got the two Daft Punk tracks that come out as well that Pharrell works on. Mm-hmm. So Get Lucky and Lose Yourself to Dance.
Yeah.
And again, I think they come out, you'll have to bear with me while I Google the dates now. Yeah, so they kind of came out within a sort of few months of each other, with like Get Lucky coming out just after. So I think at that point in time, it was that kind of track that was working. Mm-hmm. And you see that through time, at certain points in time, certain types of music will kind of peak, others will die off, and then things will change, in the next 6 months or 12 months or 18 months, whatever it may be. I just think at that time, it was just one of those tracks that it was just, again, depending on how you view it, it was the right or the wrong time for it.
That being said, though, I mean, despite my comments, it's not my favourite song or whatever. It's still timeless in the sense that if it's played now on like TV or you could walk out somewhere and you'd recognise it instantly, and it doesn't sound like, how old is it now? Like 6 years old.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think that is, to be fair, like, that's the case with most Pharrell tracks and most Neptune's tracks, to be honest. Like, I don't think his music ages. Like, I mean, there might be an odd exception, and I'm no like expert like compared to yourself, but when you hear kind of an N.E.R.D track, a Neptune's track, or a Pharrell track, it's always kind of got that kind of futuristic, kind of timeless aesthetic to it, and I think he's got a very, very good ear for like a pop song, which he's clearly evidenced with, like, you know, as to your point, the Daft Punk tracks, Happy, this one, it was just kind of like hit after hit after hit. So yeah, I mean, not my favourite one of his songs by a long shot, but it's memorable.
Yeah, and the way I kind of look at it is, we're nearly in 2020 now, but if you were out, in a bar at the weekend and this came on, despite as well all the controversies around it and what people may think of it personally, that everyone would be up dancing to this at 1 a.m. Everyone would realise it instantly and they'd be up dancing and singing it.
Mate, I was actually kind of shocked that it was 2013. I was like, I swear it was 2 years ago. Like, honestly, when I was researching for the podcast, I thought, shit, has it really been that long? Which kind of goes to show. But yeah, man, it is definitely one of those tracks that's just going to stick around. You want it.
I know you want it.
Yeah, most definitely. You want it. I know you want it. All right, let's get on to probably I was going to say the biggest controversy. It's not necessarily the biggest, but in terms of monetary value, it's most certainly the biggest. And that's the Marvin Gaye lawsuit, which was settled after appeal earlier this year. And now has obviously Marvin Gaye listed as a writer of the song, and lists the original Marvin Gaye song as being interpolated on this, and also saw the Marvin Gaye estate get eventually just over $5 million in royalties, and I'm assuming they probably get future royalties going forward as well. Based on Marvin Gaye now being listed as a writer of the song.
So I'm not gonna lie, but again, before and just to kind of get this out of the way, like I wanted to talk about this song because of the controversy, and I thought it'd be a good topic of conversation. Obviously, very familiar with it, but all of this stuff and like the deposition kind of footage that we'll go into in a moment, that was all completely new to me. So do you want to kind of elaborate a bit more around like the kind of founding of the lawsuit from the Marvin Gaye estate and the track that it was lifted from, I guess, or influenced from? So can you give me a bit of background behind it? Because I don't actually know that much about it.
Yeah, so after this came out and obviously blew up, the Marvin Gaye estate, which now owns all the kind of rights to Marvin Gaye's music, which is run by, I believe, his daughter and various members of his family, sued both Pharrell and Robin Thicke, who are the main who were listed as the writers, producers of the song, because they alleged the similarity between this song and then Got to Give It Up, which is from 1977, I think, something like that. And they alleged that the tracks were too similar, and they had obviously taken from that original Marvin Gaye track.
Was that a bit rapey as well?
I think the Marvin Gaye estate lawsuit is a bit potentially that way. And again, like I mentioned earlier, had this song not been that big, the Marvin Gaye estate wouldn't have given two shits about this song. But unfortunately, I think they had somebody or many people in that camp on their legal team that said, this is similar. We might have a case here. It's now the biggest selling song of the year. It's one of the biggest selling songs of all time. It's got millions of views online. Yeah, we should go for it.
Oh man.
And they obviously believed in it because they spent a lot of money on legal fees over the years, and they went through the appeals and all that kind of stuff. So they obviously believed it to a certain extent. But I think the lawsuit itself, I was going to say frivolous. It wasn't frivolous because you can hear the similarities. But I think in terms of how the actual law is set up, and I think if you ask any musical expert out there, I think 90% of them will probably tell you that the result that came out in the end and that the jury found and the settlement and everything else was a travesty. It shouldn't have happened. If you look at I think if you go back and you look at the actual law of copyright infringement and stuff like that when it comes to songs, a lot of it is about the melody, the actual lyrics and stuff like that, and being able to see an exact copy of that.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at these two tracks, you look at the sheet music, they're completely different. The chord progression is different, the keys are different, the BPM is different, everything is different.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you play the tracks side by side, they do sound similar to a certain extent. The BPM is different, but it is very close. I think it's 120, 122. And you have that kind of syncopated cowbell in the background, and there are similar sounds that are used. I
guarantee that like bigger nerds than us have done some kind of comparative analysis on YouTube, and
yes, there are many out there, and
tons of it online.
Yeah, I've watched quite a few of them, and there was one really, really good one that I found. Yeah, of course, that's what I do. There was a really good one that I found a couple of years back, and I was trying to find it this week again, and I can't, and I don't know if it's been taken down or it just doesn't exist anymore, whether it's just buried under all of the shit content of YouTube. If I end up being able to dig it out, I'll make sure I update the show notes with it. But yeah, there was a really, really good one online. And I think if you look at any on YouTube, from producers, legal experts, music historians, all these kinds of things, from what I have seen, and I haven't, I don't cherry pick the stuff that I watch. I want to watch everything to get the best understanding.
Yeah, of course.
Like I say, 9 out of 10 will side with Pharrell by saying, yes, this is not a copy in any way. Yes, it's influenced. Yes, there are stylistic similarities.
I mean, music in its very nature is derivative, right?
Exactly. And like we said earlier, you could pick a million tracks from any genre,
mm-hmm.
and you could go back and you could find similar tracks all the time. There are. You listen to hip hop nowadays. A lot of the stuff I don't listen to, but the kind of more popular stuff.
Yeah, your mumble rap and stuff.
It all sounds the fucking same. It's all influenced from each other.
Well, that's subjective, Steve. But no, I'm joking. No. I'm an old head as well, so I completely agree. But I was just being kind of impartial for the listeners.
The listeners don't care about your impartiality. But there's a lot of stuff where you can say it sounds the same, or this was influenced by this, or this was influenced by this. And over the years, you look at like the mid 2000s, late 2000s. There were 1,000,001 producers coming out with tracks where you listen to it and you're like, oh shit, is this a new Neptunes track? Oh no, it's just somebody biting their sound, using the same keyboards they use, and
a track that, and you're going to completely disagree or laugh at this, but Justin Timberlake's "Sexy Back," like the bass line in that, it's Timbaland produced, I think. That really reminds me of that, of Blurred Lines. I don't know why. It's obviously completely different, but there's something very familiar about the bass lines to me. Like when they could easily merge into one another. To your point, you could apply the same to so many different songs. So it's kind of you're kind of like, what's the expression I'm looking for? They were kind of clutching at straws, and I'm actually surprised that they won.
Yeah, well, I think the general consensus is that they kind of baffled the jury with a lot of technical information that the jury didn't understand. And what they did was they kept playing those songs over and over and over again to kind of cement it into their head that they are the same song, essentially.
Mind control, man. That's
and it is to a certain extent. It's you go to court for anything, and a lot of the arguments that an attorney will give, it's psychological, especially when you're playing to a jury.
Yeah.
It's all about getting into their mindset, which is why you, especially in the US, when you have court cases, you have lawyers and attorneys will spend a week picking where the case happens, what the jury selection is, because they want to pick the right people that will be favourable to them, and all this kind of stuff. And that played a part here. It played a big part here. And then the kind of baffling of the jury played a massive part here. And just a fundamental not understanding of how music is made and how it evolves over time and how it influences other people over time, especially when we get to...
Probably would have been a big kind of, waste of taxpayers' money to bring in music experts to the court. Or I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, to your point, the jury aren't necessarily qualified to make those determinations. They're not necessarily experts in the field. And
yeah, that's the thing. And each side did bring in their own kind of musical experts to try and break down the track. And
it's a topsy-turvy world we live in. If you actually fucking think about that, like, right, yeah, so you stole our song, which is basically just like an arrangement of tones and sounds. Yeah, you copied it. No, we didn't. And then investing all that time, effort, money, and life ultimately into that, it just baffles me, man. Just human beings are fucking weird, but there we go.
Yeah, very much so, really are. But when there are literally millions of dollars on the line, that can get the better of some people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned the kind of depositions and stuff there as well. There was also, I think, what kind of blew it and what had a big influence on the jury as well was Robin Thicke's kind of drunken and high interviews that he gave around that time. Yeah, as you mentioned.
Yeah, Pharrell even stepped in, didn't he? And he was like basically anything that he says is like anecdotal because he was just like, he didn't, explicitly say he was off his tits at the time, but he went in and just said, look, he could make some comments and you're basically like, I think the expression he used was like, you're hanging your hat on that comment. When you're not thinking about the wider context, you're building a case around anecdotal information that came from some guy who was like drunk and high out of his mind. And I think, Pharrell came across really, really well in that. I think he was very kind of articulate. He was speaking logically, whereas Robin Thicke was just kind of like, wiping it, wiping his hands of any accountability, because he was just like, I don't remember anything I said before. I was obviously not in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, the problem is, I think, when they made the track, they obviously, they knew it had that kind of groove to it, that Marvin Gaye kind of sound to it. Whether they intentionally went for that or not, only Pharrell knows. But the problem was, in all those kind of subsequent interviews, Robin Thicke, when he's out of his mind, is constantly talking about... we tried to get a Marvin Gaye groove. We tried to emulate that, and we tried to replicate that in some way. And he was really laying it on in his interviews about the whole Marvin Gaye influence. And then obviously when you get to Pharrell then being told about this, he says, well, no, that's not actually... not quite the case. You can't really believe everything he was saying in interviews. He's trying to sell records, and he's just saying what he needs to say, and it isn't quite the truth. And then even Robin Thicke in his depositions, he was quite candid about the fact that he was just constantly high and drunk. And I think one of the questions was, would you consider yourself a liar? And he kind of paused for a minute, and I think he says yes, he would consider himself a liar. And they're asking him about why did he say certain things, and he his response is, I say what I feel I need to say at any given point in time to sell the most records that I need to sell.
An ambassador of your kind of brand and your record, and that's kind of justified, right? I guess he didn't realise the kind of implications behind it when he was doing it, or probably doesn't remember, to your point. But yeah, man, I think did one of the guys interviewing him refer to him as Robin Thicke at one point? I swear down I heard someone mispronounce his name, and I was just like, have I been calling him Thick all these years? It's actually pronounced Thicke. Nah, this guy must be wrong.
I missed that, but in the past I have heard him being called Robin Thicke.
Thicke, all right. Yeah, I quite like that one.
I've heard that. And I think what I was just kind of on the subject, one other kind of not revelation to come from the depositions, but one interesting point is when they were asking Pharrell about his ability to read music, to read sheet music and notes on a page essentially, and they say, can you read music this way? And he says yes. I think in the past he has given other interviews where he has said he didn't grow up learning music that way. He learned most of it or a lot of it by ear, but obviously over time he has learned that more technical side of it.
Yeah.
So he answers yes to this. I assume the attorney or whatever he is then kind of puts sheet music in front of him and says, okay, can you name these notes? Can you name the duration of these notes? And, real kind of technical stuff. And Pharrell declines to answer for one reason or another. The kind of insight into that is, if you look, as we mentioned earlier, if you look at both of those songs on paper, when they're written out, kind of musical notes, they are completely different. So if you're going to go through both of the songs in that way, the Marvin Gaye estate doesn't have a leg to stand on because they are completely different. But I think the issue there is perhaps Pharrell wasn't quite sure of what he was actually seeing in terms of some of the more technical side of it there. Point.
And he didn't want to appear to be vulnerable from a music. He didn't want to lose any kind of credibility, perhaps publicly.
Yeah,
no, that makes sense, man.
And he says during the thing like, "Oh, I'm not comfortable." That's the expression he uses, and the attorney keeps saying to him, "Okay, but you need to give me an answer." And he's like, "I'm not comfortable. That is my answer." And the attorney even says to him, "So you're saying to me that you can't read music then? I've asked you if you can read music. You're now refusing to do it. That means you can't read music." And Pharrell's answer again is, "Yeah, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable." Mm-hmm. It's a strange one. It's like I say, if he had gone into it in depth, I think they would have been fine. And I think he probably generally knew from a technical perspective what's on the paper, but maybe didn't want to get caught out by anything he maybe wasn't 100% sure on.
Right, Steve, man. Let me put it to you then. As like a Pharrell super fan, if it kind of came out that he couldn't read music, would that affect your kind of view on him, or would it remain the same? Like, what would your kind of thoughts on that be? Because I've got an opinion on it, but obviously I'd be keen to hear yours, being the massive Pharrell fan that you are.
It would probably increase my respect for him. Being able to make such a body of music while not having all the kind of technical abilities that a lot of other people have.
No, I couldn't agree more with you, man. That's exactly where I was going with that. I think it's got like an ear for it, and he's not necessarily like classically trained, but he still has the ability to make music like he does. Then damn, man, he's he's not human. But I completely agree with you, man. But maybe in his mind, he didn't want to be viewed by his kind of peers he didn't want in a negative light. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you can tell it obviously bothered him at the time, the whole kind of case and this this kind of line of questioning into kind of his integrity and his technical abilities and stuff like that. But what I didn't expect was 6 years later it would still bother him quite so much. So you mentioned earlier the kind of GQ interview, and this is a sit-down interview he did with the producer Rick Rubin for GQ recently. I see a lot of people talking about the interview and saying how amazing it is. Personally, I think it's a pretty whack interview. It's very bland. There's not
just
really much
they're just like sat at Rick Rubin's place. And Rick Rubin's there, just living a life like Rick Branson stuff, just like t-shirt and green tea. Oh man,
out in Malibu, loving life.
One.
The interview itself, I didn't really think much of it, but the one part that did stick out for me was when Pharrell mentioned something briefly about blurred lines, and Rick Rubin says, "Oh well, I wasn't going to talk about blurred lines, but seeing as you mentioned it, we'll go into it." Mm-hmm. And again, Pharrell kind of very passionately defends it, not in terms of the kind of lyrical content and stuff we talked about earlier, but in terms of this kind of lawsuit in itself. He very passionately defends the way it was made, how it sounds. Rick Rubin, one of the greatest, I was going to say hip-hop producers, not hip-hop producers, just music producers of recent times, was in complete agreement with him in terms of you can't copyright a groove or a feeling, and that's kind of what it is. So it was interesting to see Pharrell kind of get quite so, not worked up, but kind of passionate about it all these years later. And I guess he can now talk about it openly because the lawsuit was finalised earlier this year, so he's actually able to talk about it. And I guess he's been waiting 6 years to actually have his say about it.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, man, because I think like you obviously hear kind of conflicting views he's given, initially defending it and then going on to say that, oh, maybe I was naive to the chauvinism that was going on generally in music at the time, which I kind of find a little bit hard to believe. But I think naturally, as an artist, to your point, we see, obviously he's got like a business brain as well, but as consumers of music, and obviously being taking it that step further, like you do, like we do as like podcasters, fans of music, you go into the kind of like the analytics and the figures and all of that stuff as well. So obviously like, sales figures, etc. But first and foremost, he is a creative type. He is like a person who likes making music, right? He likes creating something for people to enjoy. And to have that kind of picked apart, questioned, tarnished, you're going to be pissed off. Do you know what I mean? It's like, imagine if heaven forbid, man, like this podcast goes out and someone's like, that was fucking shit. That was terrible. Like it was a bit rapey. You'd probably jump on a subsequent podcast and defend it,
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
exactly.
Most
man.
Definitely.
And I guess, these celebrities have kind of almost kind of godlike status in the sense that people think, oh, they're just, otherworldly entities. They're not people. When in fact, I mean, you've met Pharrell, man. You said when you met him, he was the most kind of humble, down to earth, hardworking, busy guys. And he probably didn't have time for all of this shit in his life because he's probably constantly thinking about the next song he wants to make, whilst making other stuff. So I think it's kind of cool to see him get that passionate about it. But at the same time, it's like a double-edged sword. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like it probably didn't do him any favors initially, whereas to your point now, he can probably openly talk about it because the dust has settled a bit. But yeah, man, it's just crazy to me how people lose their shit over music. Like, honestly, man, I mean, that's the power of music, I guess. But people lose their shit over a lot of things, but music seems like something that, I mean, compared to actual rape, or compared to murder, compared to genocide, compared to bestiality, you alluded to earlier, it's fucking music, man.
But that's the thing, it's so it resonates in so many different ways with different people. Everyone looks at every song in a slightly different way. People see things in lyrics that, lyrics I probably didn't even realise were there in a certain song. But people pick them out, or people pick out sounds and focus on those sounds, and people pick out similarities they feel from to other songs. And
people follow their own kind of narratives, don't they? They kind of pick and choose, and they kind of repurpose everything, and they just think, right, this is the truth that I believe in, and I'm going to pursue it. And then if they hear otherwise, then they're just argue to the end of the earth rather than having a conversation about it. So I mean, it's cool that all this has happened in a sense, because it kind of it demonstrates the awesome power of music, but at the same time, it's just like, it kind of highlights how, I don't know, like it just kind of highlights how stupid humans are.
To a certain extent, yeah. I think what it does highlight is just, what a sort of, it sounds really cheesy, but what a sort of like changing world we live in at the moment.
Oh yeah, man.
Of the last kind of 10 years or so, where, a song that's kind of written as a pop song for people to dance to empower and help liberate women is, turned into a song that's, called rapey and is seen as being against women and is seen to put women down. And then also, it pays homage to a classic track, and then the people from that original track just want to get money from it, and
But I've got a better example of a more seedy song, and I think it's Pharrell. It was Mystical, Shake Your Ass, right? That was this Pharrell produced that as well?
Yeah.
Have you covered that on the podcast yet?
We didn't do any mystical ones at the start.
Is that because of like his his actual rapey vibes? He's a convicted rapist, so yeah.
Yes. So I was gonna mention that, and when I did put the kind of working list together at the start, that was going to be one of the songs that was included.
Yeah.
Because there is also a video. Pharrell is also in the video. It was a fairly big song at the time, but that did put me off doing it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Because of Mystical's since issues that he's had, and as you say, he has been convicted of
actual rape, as opposed to making a song that could be misconstrued to be about rape, which
exactly
is somewhat of a lesser issue, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I think that's why it's kind of a bit baffling to me, because like that's the song out of his whole discography. I'm like, oh wait a minute, anyone else remember that? Because we often talk about this on our podcast, separating like the art from the artist, and whether or not that's okay. Obviously, you're entitled to your opinion on it. The way I stand on it is and this is obviously a little bit of a tangent, is that I'm not going to completely like disown the music if I like it, so long as it's not lacing the pocket of a convicted criminal. Do you know what I'm saying? So say if like, the whole kind of Michael Jackson thing's a bit different because it's still alleged ultimately, and whatever your opinions are on that, are your own. But let's just say, for example, he was guilty, right? I'm not going to stop listening to Michael Jackson music. It's because I really like the music. Is that wrong of me? Is it right of me? What's your view on it, man?
I think it very much depends on the person, and this is something I think about quite regularly, if I'm honest. Michael Jackson is probably up there above Pharrell, in my opinion. People that know myself and know Dave, that started the podcast with me, know that we're two absolutely massive fans, and we're always sending each other like little video clips and things from shows and songs and all this, and which really big fans. And it is something I do consider every now and again. Now I have very specific views on the allegations of many years ago, then the more recent ones, and stuff like that. So ultimately it has led me to not stop listening to his music. But, and there's a big but, 3-4 months ago, I did delete every R. Kelly song that was in my in my Apple Music library.
I think that's the difference between alleged and convicted, right? And there is no denying that R. Kelly is a massive sex pest. So you were right to do that, and I agree with you. It's just the whole Michael Jackson thing is difficult as well, because I love his music, and even though it's alleged, there's always that kind of element of doubt, which always makes it kind of an internal struggle, And it's always something that you consider when you go through your playlist, and you're like, I'm speaking about myself, to be like, oh this track, and there's always something in the back of your mind thinking, oh, is this okay? But it's always something that needs to be discussed when discussing artistic types and kind of separating them from their art. Because once the art's in the world, it's owned by everyone, in my opinion. So long as that a convicted person is not, it's not making money or like reaping the rewards of that, i.e. Gary Glitter from the latest.
That's a reference I was actually about to use. In fact, I think most people listening to this podcast will have no idea who Gary Glitter is, I have to say.
Probably for the best. But I guarantee they would have definitely heard that song.
They would know the songs, yes.
Yeah.
And I would say go away and maybe Google Gary Glitter. Maybe do it on a private browser, though, so that people don't see what you're Googling, just in case. But yeah, that's another kind of example of that kind of predatory, awful behaviour. Mm-hmm. And then, where do you stand with the music? I think we've got to a point now where the stuff he did was so awful that everyone has just kind of disowned him, basically.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, but then, those songs do crop up every now and again, and if you go back, and especially if you watch older...
That song was in, it was in, The Water Boy, I think, or maybe it was, Happy Gilmore or something like that, and more recently it was in Joker. I've heard it pop up in so many different things. It was in an episode of South Park some time ago, although that doesn't surprise me at all. But yeah, man, I think it's always a good topic of conversation, and that applies to any kind of medium of entertainment. Kind of like Kevin Spacey. American Beauty is one of my favourite films, as is The Usual Suspects, and it's always again like an internal conflict watching those films. But I still watch them, I still enjoy them. But it's almost like Like,
Yeah.
it's difficult.
Should I be enjoying this, knowing what he then potentially did?
But then you could, I mean, without sounding negative, if you think about these cases which have just come to light, there must be kind of so many, like a multitude of other cases and other people that we don't know about, and we're still like, willfully kind of watching them and listening to them, and completely ignorantly, and that will probably come to light eventually. You just never know. Like, I think people are people and art is art, and they should be separate. But that's easier said than done.
It is, and it is down to everyone's kind of personal interpretation of that and their own discretion.
100%.
Like for me personally, if somebody is convicted of some horrible crime against somebody else, then I will probably just delete their music or not watch their movies or whatever it might be. If it's alleged, or if I have a very, very strong opinion a certain way, then I may kind of.
What if it was like? So I used the example with like Kevin Spacey and like The Usual Suspects, for example. Will you not watch that film again?
Possibly in the future, but since all this kind of stuff has happened and since he was initially arrested and everything, I wouldn't say I've actively avoided anything with him in it, but I certainly haven't since watched anything with him in it.
Okay.
And if a movie with him in it did crop up on Netflix, it was recommended to me or something, I think at the moment and for the foreseeable future, because I don't know exactly where my thoughts on it all lie, I would probably skip over it for now.
Mm-hmm. It's a diplomatic response, man. But back to blurred lines. So there were blurred lines within that conversation as well.
Oh mate, blurred lines everywhere. all the lines are blurred.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much everything on blurred lines, isn't it? I think we've covered all the important stuff, or at least tried to.
Definitely, man. It was an interesting topic of conversation. We went off some kind of interesting tangents as well. It was definitely it's a very meaty one, I'd say. Not so much in terms of the track itself, because it's a little bit vanilla in my opinion, but the context that sit behind it and the conversation that surrounds it is definitely makes it for a good topic of conversation, man.
Yeah, and I think it's a conversation on numerous sides that will continue to go on for many years, I feel.
Yeah, no, 100%. It'll be interesting to see how this song is viewed in, like, say, 100 years' time. When people kind of like dig it out of the archives and put it on whatever media that they're listening to music on, and they're like, okay, this was offensive back then, sure.
Yeah, it would be one extreme or the other, I imagine.
Yeah, all music will be banned. So
all music, all Kevin Spacey films.
Yeah.
And for those people listening, if you haven't seen some of these interviews and news clips and stuff like that, I will include the links in the show notes to most of these on YouTube, as well as a few different analysis pieces in terms of the technical side of the songs that people have produced. So you can have a look through there and maybe make up your own minds. All right, anything else to add for blurred lines?
I think that's it, man. I think we're all out. I think about.
All right, that's it. All right, so I'm going to very, very quickly run through some of the latest news, some of the latest releases, and then we can get going. So I'm kind of going backwards here because this is just from my show notes of recent. What's the word I'm looking for? Preparation notes. That's what I'm looking for. But yeah, announced I think earlier today or yesterday a new Adidas Ultra Boost. I've got 20 here. I don't know if it's 20 or 2.0 because I'm not up to date on the latest Ultra Boost versions. But there is a new version coming out in collaboration with BBC. BBC have recently posted about, pay attention to find out how you can win one or buy one or whatever it might be. It's a nice looking shoe. I'd like to see some more images of it and see it on the foot, but there will be some more info from BBC coming very soon. Bust Down Tees have a new tee coming out. From memory, because I didn't write this down in my notes, I think it's coming out tomorrow, which will be Friday the 29th, because we are recording this Thursday night at the moment. Happy Thanksgiving to all of those American listeners, by the way. So the new Bust Downs tee is the Pharrell chain t-shirt that was released at Complex Con. When was that? A couple of months back. They did obviously the Nego chain version last year, which I believe they were selling for $400 or $500. I'm assuming this one will be in the same kind of price bracket. But if you're a fan of Bust Down Tees and the stuff they're doing, keep your eyes peeled for that. They will probably sell out very, very quickly. This week, we've also seen the release of the BBC Fundamentals collaboration. This was released in Japan, I think, a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. You can also pick up the pieces at BBC EU at the moment, and I'm assuming the US also has them as well. BBC EU are now branching out into their own record label almost. Shout out Ross for the great work he's doing over there. They've put out their first release. It's an Alan Kingdom EP called Current Events. It was limited to 200 or 300 pressings, something like that. And they also recently put on a Cousin Steve's show in London as well. They'll be doing some more stuff with the music in the near future, I'm sure. We've also seen the re-release of the Diamond and Dollar hoodies in all of the original colourways, white, cream and black. I don't know where I stand on this. This goes along the lines of the conversations we've also had recently around the re-release of kind of classic designs and stuff like that. Personally, I love the original designs. It's nice to see some of them come back. So if you never got to kind of cop one when they first came out, when was that, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was, you can now get a re-release at least. I believe these are on the EU site and maybe the US site at the moment, so go and check those out. One recent release that I do really, really like and really need to try and get hold of is the human-made Star Trek collection. So by the looks of it, I think this is Rob Walker putting out some Star Trek memorabilia. We've seen a lot of Star Trek stuff recently, actually, the last 18 months or so. I don't know if something is perhaps going on in the background there, but this new Star Trek with Human Made is really, really nice. There's some nice t-shirts and hoodies, and I really need to try and get a hoodie. I don't think these will be available online. They're being sold initially at a pop-up store in Shinjuku, starting yesterday, the 27th of November, running until the 25th of December. I imagine it's a very limited run, so even though the pop-up store will be there for a month, I imagine this collection will probably sell out fairly fast. A couple of music-related bits of news. The new Beck album came out last week.
Oh, snap.
Seven Pharrell tracks on there. I still haven't got around to listening to it. I've heard...
I wasn't even aware of it.
No? Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, man.
It hasn't had a huge amount of promotion, to be fair. Pharrell hasn't talked about it much. I think purposely they're not doing a lot around it. It was kind of... It wasn't a surprise release. I think we knew they were working together for a while. But the whole album itself, and when it dropped, there wasn't a huge marketing campaign around it or anything. So I think they're kind of purposely putting it out there into the world with minimal marketing to kind of see what people really think of it.
Cover art looks good, man. It's it's got the kind of like 80s throwback synthwave type album cover. Yeah, I'll check that out.
It's got that kind of sound as well from the little snippets I've heard so far.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, check that one out, people. And then also a big announcement that came last week, the classic Neptunes track that is probably, for Neptunes fans out there, this will be one of their favourite albums. It always rates very highly amongst Neptunes fans. And that is Khalees's Kaleidoscope.
Ooh.
It's approaching its 20th anniversary. And for the 20th anniversary, Khalees will be doing an EU-only tour. I think she has 8 or 10 dates that she's doing dotted around Europe. I will be heading to the Berlin show. Got my tickets, I've got my flight booked, got the hotel booked. So I will be in Berlin for that show. If anyone else is attending, I know a few people have messaged me so far about meeting up. If you are listening to this and you are that way or you can get there, this is Berlin, so there are lots of cheap flights to Berlin. Then definitely hit me up and we will try and do some kind of meet-up perhaps. I'll be there for a few days. I think the show is on a Wednesday night, a Wednesday or Thursday, and I think I'm there the day before and the day after as well. So
I'm gutted I can't make that, man. That would be amazing. Are you going to get your kind of strong, independent woman vibe on, like caught out there? I hate you so much right now.
I'm going to purposely dye my hair multicolour.
Please do.
And yeah.
Amazing album.
No, she'll also be in the UK. She'll be doing London and Manchester as well. I was going to try and go to those, but flight costs were ridiculous and hotel costs. It worked out. Yeah, a return flight to Berlin cost me €40, whereas going back to the UK was 250 or something ridiculous. So it's Berlin for me. There is also Copenhagen, which is probably a bit closer for me as well, but I've not been to Berlin before, so...
You should, man. Berlin's a sick city. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'll be there for 3 whole days, so if anyone has any recommendations of places to go, things to do, hit me up. And I was gonna announce something else I'm working on, but I shall withhold that information for now and keep it a secret in case it doesn't actually come off. But there may be something else.
Tell me off there, man.
I'll tell you off there.
Yeah.
But then there may be something else happening around that tour and that show. But we will see. But I think that is everything for now. That's everything on my list and my show notes. I'm sure there was much more going on the last couple of weeks, but that's what we've got for now. So if you want to check out the show notes and all the links and whatnot, you'll probably get them in the podcast app in which you're listening to this, or you can head over to the website, which is theothers.net, obviously Others with a Z. You can find us on Instagram and all those places at Otherz Podcast. And you can find me at Steve R. Penny. Tom, where can people find you and your lovely podcast?
So people probably aren't interested in myself as a person, but if they're interested in checking out the podcast, then you can follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Shotgun The Aux. So SHOTGUNTHEAUX. All platforms, and you can find our podcast on all digital platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Acast, Kiki, which is a new one, and you can see the video footage on YouTube as well. So we host guests from all over the UK. If you're into UK hip hop, check it out. If you're into hip hop in general, check it out. Steve mentioned earlier, he's jumped on the show as well. We had a good old chat about kind of Pharrell at a very kind of cursory level and all kinds of stuff. So it's we're doing good things. So if you're into that, come give us a follow.
Yeah, definitely. If you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously a music and or hip hop fan. Most of our listeners are US based, and I'm fairly sure that most of them won't have heard of a lot of the artists and guests that you have on. So if you're into hip hop, then definitely check out Shotgun The Aux and find out a little bit about British hip hop and stuff that's going on in the scene there as well.
Yeah, man. So just to so our latest guest we had on was Verb T, and he's part of a crew called the 4 Hours, and they had a track on their last album. They worked with DJ Premier. So I mean they have links to the US, so there are kind of synergies there. But definitely worth checking out if you're into hip hop in general, because that's how me and you know each other, innit, Steve? We obviously worked together some time ago, and we just kind of connected through a mutual passion for hip hop music. We've been to kind of several gigs together over the years, and it's just been cool to kind of vibe off each other for this long, man.
Yeah, definitely. It's been yes, a great and long friendship so far. And
yeah.
Always interesting when we get together and have a few beers and chat about all the latest stuff going on in music, in movies and TV and all that kind of stuff that we love.
Definitely, man. I wanted to thank you for having me on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. And apologies to listeners out there for my kind of probably apparent lack of knowledge, all things Pharrell, BBC, Ice Cream and N.E.R.D. But I've got I know just enough about it to form some kind of opinion, and hopefully you're not bored of me waffling on. So big up Steve, and thanks for having me on, man.
No, thank you, man. The pleasure has been all mine, all ours. And more than enough to hold your own and offer some insight into what we're talking about. So we'll definitely get you back again at some point in the future.
Love to, man. Thank you.
All right, man. And that's it from us this week, everyone. And we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Peace.